Welcome to the Gens and Associates Regulatory Executive Podcast Series, where we explore innovation in the regulatory space. This is Steve Gens, Managing Partner, and today I'm happy to be speaking with somebody that many of you know very well, Dom from Accumulus Technologies. So Dom, we've known each other for many, many years. And when you went to Accumulus, I believe it was 4 years ago, I was like, wow, that's really, really interesting. You know, we have a very seasoned industry veteran joining, so this must be a serious proposition. So it's 4 years later, so really glad that you're joining us and to give an update to our listeners. So before we get started, why don't you just introduce yourself and the company, Accumulus Technologies. For those, I think it's probably just a small amount that might not know you or Accumulus Technologies. So take it away, Dom.
First of all, Steve, thank you for having me today. Yeah, it's a great pleasure to be here and also, connecting after all those years, as you mentioned. So by way of introductions, I've been working in this industry for, over 30 years now, close to 30 years, really looking from the beginning of how document management system was created. I remember implementing the very first company, EDMS 98, for people who give it my age a little bit in that area. Always been passionate about technology and regulatory affairs. I'm a pharmacist by training, and I've been working with, supporting patients globally since I started to work in this industry. I've been working in various pharmaceutical companies. I had the pleasure of working into some vendor in the past. CDC Solutions, again, for people who still remember CDC Solutions, that became Liquid afterwards, really supporting the move from paper to digital. At the time, we were starting to get ECTD in the very first place. And then I had, after that, working in different places, from France, where I'm originally from, but also moving to the US over 20 years ago and working at companies such as Novo Nordisk, and more recently at Amgen when I was leading global regulatory operations. And Amgen also had the pleasure of implementing Viva REM for the whole company as the business leader. So 2.5 years of work to implement multiple modules, which then led me to, when I was working in Amgen, Amgen was one of the first company to sign up for Accumulus Synergy as a sponsor. And for me, it was a natural progression to start working at Accumulus as well. First of all, as a resources that was provided for Accumulus to get started. So Accumulus is a very interesting story. I think it's very unique because about 5+ years ago, you had the head of R&D for multiple pharmaceutical companies together with the head of several regulatory agencies getting together and looking about how can we do better for the future, supporting our patients, be more efficient in our processes, and essentially how technology can help us to get there. And the realization that technology was advancing pretty fast, but then the processes and the way we're processing submissions today was not. We're still into an ECTD world, and we're still pushing digital paper pretty much. So how can we accelerate that part? And so the concept of creating a company dedicated to work to that extent was actually supported by those organizations. Accumulus was created as a non-for-profit, Accumulus Synergies. And at the beginning, it was truly a virtual organization. No dedicated headcounts. It was essentially the funding from 12 pharmaceutical companies, plus those companies providing people like me to help support the creation of these organizations. So each companies had provided people in different capacity to support different aspects of the company. And then the company was formally created, slightly over 4 years ago now, close to 4 years. I was employee number 3, so really at the beginning of the company, and say, well, we're here dedicated to really change the ecosystem. And the first aspect of my work was, of course, establishing the organization, but looking around how technology can help support greater collaboration. And first aspect is looking at currently available technology. And as you know, Steve, the technology available, 4 years ago was very siloed. Document management system was created with the intent to be only used by one company and not to be used across multiple in the ecosystem. And so we decided actually to build a new platform, a SaaS platform from the ground up, because nothing was currently available that we can leverage in order to go at the scale we wanted to go. And so we're starting to build the platforms and continue to engage with our regional sponsors and then engage with a greater ecosystem. And today we have made huge strides in being able to have actually over 70 regulatory agencies using the platform, and then a large numbers of projects, sometimes called pilot by agencies, running into the platform. I think the company went into production in January 2024, which is often referenced as the Rush pilot.
Yep.
Reliance has been existing for many, many years, but it was a unique opportunity to have technology to the Reliance processes and principles, and how technology can help scale up Reliance principles and providing what is essential: transparency, same information to everyone, help build trust amongst regulatory agencies. And so this is how essentially, the first pilot was run, and then now again, we fast forward, we have a lot of different projects currently running in the platform, a lot more regulatory agencies involved, and very excited to be part of this journey, having worked in different parts of the ecosystem and now be able to get and interact a lot with regulatory agencies and NGOs around the globe.
Yeah, so thanks, Dom, for that good introduction. Certainly, when I heard about Accumulus, 4 years ago, and I'm just being transparent here, and I was a little skeptical because, there's been a few generations of attempts like the CBIX, initiative and things like this, and it's like, yeah, is it going to be a CBIX? However, there's really, like, to your point, originally there's really good sponsorship, from 12, the major nationals. And, as you guys started getting into kind of, and I know you've had to educate me when I say pilot, it's like, well, these are real projects, right? When that started coming about, it's like, wow, this thing has legs. And we always talk about the digital bridge between sponsors and health authorities. And, this is true end-to-end thinking because, people would say, geez, the complexity of regulatory. I said, well, I have a simple solution. I'll never see it in my lifetime. If we just had one worldwide health organization and kind of regional, kind of offices, that we wouldn't have these 150 health agencies and all the complexities. Because if you think about it, like from a math standpoint, it's the permutations that, like in labeling in different areas, that, well, you say it's just a submission, you just a label change because, you bought somebody, but people just don't realize all the complexity, time, cost, that's very, very distracting from the mission about getting to patients and all that. So it's really been interesting. And I know when you and I talked earlier in the year, it's like, this is really real. I need to get educated. And thanks again for, presenting at our private webinar with our members, that everybody realize, it's not only innovation, this could be a serious game changer because, the more I thought about it, getting back to, well, we just need one worldwide health organization. It's like, actually, we don't. If we had one kind of standard where we all collaborate, we can have these, different organizational reflections, on it. And certainly on the medicinal side with the ECTD and some of the standards work with the ICH over the last 25 years is kind of foundational to really allow some of the stuff that you're doing. I was just at a MedTech forum, and they talked a little bit about Cumulus, at the MedTech forum on Monday. So you gave a great introduction as far as kind of how Cumulus got started to present day. So I think where we would really want to jump in for our listeners is really sharing some of the experiences, because like, where is the innovation? And like with any big, kind of change or innovations, there's perceptions of what we believe the benefits are. And then some of them happen and some of them don't. But there's also surprises along the way, some of the things that you didn't imagine, but there's great benefits. So, because the thing when you were sharing and really updating me, the first thing that came to mind is like, wow, as this matures, it can, or it should fundamentally alter regulatory strategy as opposed to the 30-year paradigm of wave one, wave two, wave three, right? So why don't you just take us through the many different kind of projects, experiences, where you're seeing the benefits, projected future benefits, any surprises? Why don't we start there?
Okay, no, thanks you, Steve. And yes, I agree with you that for me, this is a game changer, because you can have really the sense of this concept of a global dossier. And I think when you talk with regulators around the globe, everybody is for a global dossier. The sense of, hey, it's one science. It shouldn't be, 30 different dossiers, getting shipped around the globe, where you have agencies duplicating the efforts with the same content pretty much.
Yep.
And this was a little wake-up calls from COVID, right? Where COVID agency pulled together their resources to go faster. But now getting back to the use of the platform, as I mentioned, the first pilot that was running into the platform. And again, when I mentioned pilot, this is actually a real submission with real content and real outcomes. So it's production data, of course. It started with Roche. Well, the initial phase was to share Health 30 questions. Part of reliance and the principles of knowledge sharing is that you share your Health 30 questions in real time based upon a common dossier. And then each agency can see each other's questions along the way. When we started the journey, and again, very grateful for the partnership with Roche, we honestly didn't know if the fact that having access to the same information and other agency questions will generate more questions because, oh, I see an interesting question from this agency, I'm going to ask the same, or I'm interested in that as well. Or would it reduce the numbers of questions overall? So you avoid duplication because you've seen already a question asked by agency, and therefore you feel comfortable with the answer provided and you don't ask the same questions. So what we see in this intro pilot actually is a reduction of questions along the way and a very significant reductions of duplication, as well as many actually agencies truly applying the principles of reliance, in this case, didn't ask any questions. Just look at what was in the platforms, had access to an assessment report, the same dossier that in this case EMA had reviewed and approved. And the timing was around, general timing generally given the project is around 6 to 9 months. And what is key in this approach is the regulatory predictability. Today, if you do major manufacturing changes, let's say type 2 variations, for example, equivalent in Europe, you have pretty standard timelines in countries that have a higher level of maturity. You know that perhaps in 3-4 months, you're going to get a decision, hopefully an approval. And other part of the world, this can take 2 to 3 years. So from a supply chain, this is a major burden to have to predict on how you might be able to shift to a new manufacturing site, a new manufacturing process. And this predictability help enable greater planning and be able to free up resources in different manufacturing, so much more manufacturing agility along the way. And so what we're seeing now in the platform is, I think we have dozens of projects, pilots running into the platform at the moment. We still see a bulk of those to be in the CMC area because it's well-established processes. And as I mentioned, we already have 70 agencies that have been part of one or more project into the platform. So those are becoming more and more standards in approaching agencies and be able to share not only the questions, but now we're sharing the full dossier in the platform so agencies can see the same dossier in these digital forms. We leverage the CTD as a backbone so that it's a common ground that any agencies, even if they're still on a paper review processes, have a digital copy of it. And then they had access to an assessment reports, approval letters, Health 30 question responses in real time to facilitate these processes. And we see the results to be very consistent. Different companies run different pilots, different set of countries, different Health 30 as a reference Health 30 as well. But the consistency around roughly 80% of the countries do follow these roughly 6 months principles. So you know that you invited 30, 40 countries, you're going to get roughly 80% of those that's going to approve within the 6 months and roughly about 100% within 9 months. So those enables companies to reflect on their reg strategy and says, well, I have these major manufacturing changes that will enable better supply chain, which is core to what countries want, right? You know, we've seen during COVID and after major supply chain issues. So health authorities are very supportive of those principles because it provides insurance that they won't get any drug shortage or other areas within their countries. So agencies are very eager to participate because they truly see the benefits for their patients, they support within their own countries.
Yeah, and I would imagine, sorry, Dom, that the thing with your supply chain, because anybody in supply chain, they would want predictability. So I would imagine this increases, the predictability, the visibility. Like you said, is everything. Because again, under the covers of this, it's such complexity every day.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. And generally have multiple, changes happening in the same time and everything. So it's simplified the processes, but also you have, again, a single dossier for everyone, which is, again, a benefit, but also a challenge for the industry. Industry is not used to have a single dossier for all countries, and therefore they're providing more information to specific countries that in the past had a more redacted version of it. So it's a change in paradigm around same information to everyone. And again, as I mentioned before, even though they have access to more information, this is not generating more questions, which is one of the key, hesitations at the moment, at the beginning, and says if you provide more, we get more questions. What also has been interesting to watch is now we're starting to move, and we still, of course, do a lot of CMC post-approval changes, but we've seen new clinical indications running in the platform. We see joint assessments in clinical trials, and joint scientific advice that was done in a partnership, for example, with CEPI, with 21 countries. So these are showing the art of the possible. Once you have the established framework in the platform to exchange information and invite at will regulatory agencies, you can think of different regulatory processes. Again, possible changes remains core, but we're starting to see companies who wants to innovate and then bringing like 5 agencies together on a new initial applications. Really says, hey, you can all benefit from each other from a joint review perspective. And we're seeing this machinery, working and then snowballing a little bit around have another idea and then reach out to the agencies, say, would you be interested in exploring this or this? So I think the future is bright in terms of collaboration. I'm very happy to see that happening. It's taking shape as more and more countries join and more countries do accept multiple projects after the initial one, and also more and more companies are looking to do again more and more project in this regulatory collaboration. You asked me about a few listeners. I think for me, the first one is the engagements of regulatory agencies. At the beginning, it's a new system, it's a new process, it's like new everything. So we didn't know how well it would be received by agencies. And actually, it's been very well received. And we have agencies, presenting. I was at DIA Japan recently, and we had agencies presenting around their experience around Accumulus, providing feedback on how we can improve the platform. And a surprise tidbit that was given was one agency is that they're using actually the platform for education purposes. And it was something we didn't start at the beginning and say, we can see everybody else's questions. We can see their assessment reports. And therefore, our new trainees at the agency, we show them the platform and we show how, an agency is doing their reviews. We show them the questions, and it helps support our educations. And to WHO perspective, it helps support regulatory strengthening, which is essentials to get a level on which a country can become fully independent with their review processes. Many agencies share with us that they're using the platform as a way to grow their maturity levels and move toward a more digital environment without the requirements of heavy investment that sometimes low and medium income countries cannot afford, but enable them to leapfrog a little bit to a more digital world and having access to the same information that for them, I think, is invaluable, that they know they have the same dossier and email because they can see it. And that point was very telling when we talk with them around the passion that we have from agencies in actually asking for more content to be brought to them because they're eager to have access to this information.
Yeah, and before you get to the second point, I mean, this is really fascinating. What's coming up for me, and with people in the health ministries, that as they're collaborating with others, there is an educational process, like you're saying. They have broader context. Well, this country's looking at it this way. I'm looking at it this way. Which, that brings, we all look at things differently, right? It brings a lot more diversity to the thinking and then kind of strengthens, the overall package. And certainly there's been so much discussion with other, providers in the whole Africa space, and I know you're very active there. And I think that's a great example of a leapfrog instead of the classic, everybody has to have their own individual systems and that they're just fast forward and can be an equal with companies that are really mature, through a platform like you have. So it must be really rewarding too, Dom, just to be part of that experience. So
Exactly. I had the pleasure of talking with various regulators at the very senior levels around the globe and traveling a lot as well. Just came back from Argentina. I'm heading to Kenya in a couple of weeks, really engaging locally with the authorities and organizations such as WHO, the Gates Foundation, against CEPI for pandemic preparedness, ensuring that we have a framework to support collaboration at scale. And I think, again, what we've been able to have, discussions directly with regulators is this little tidbits of information that says, hey, I think one mentioned, they say, we don't want to ask a stupid question because we've been watched.
Yeah.
We see the other ones, in there, and if we don't feel the question is pertinent, we're not going to ask it. And also they told us was interesting, all the tidbits is it creates a healthy competition between regulatory agencies, because they go in there and they can see in real time all the approval being granted. And one mentioned to us, they say, we don't want to be the last one. So we're looking at others, we're looking at the neighbors. So it's interesting. And again, it was not, of course, the intent, but it's a side benefits that we're saying, and says, because everything is visible, it creating a very interesting connection between those agencies, more regional clusters, and they watch each other. And some at the beginning, didn't participate in the platform for whatever reasons, but I see the neighbors on the side that says, oh, they're all participating. So we should be as well. We don't want to be left behind. And it's very interesting to watch that dynamic, evolutions of engagements happening.
Yeah, and it's what comes up for me on those comments. It must, from a regulator, and I'm just guessing, it must bring a higher level of confidence knowing that you have a lot of different colleagues. They just happen to be in different agencies also looking at it. So maybe that's another, aspect of the benefit. When the confidence goes up, the more likelihood to say, okay, we're going to improve, and we're still, shorting the cycle time because there's increased confidence. I'm just guessing. I don't know.
Yeah,
Kind of getting
exactly.
through the tea leaves, with kind of these shared experiences.
No, exactly. I think and I think even Amgen was public with it recently. In their project, they have seen agencies that reach out to them and says, hey, we saw all the processes and we decided not to ask any questions and get to direct approval. It's building trust, right? A lot of things we're missing in our industry is trust for various reasons. But in this case, it's very transparent. You see everything. There's nothing, that, you say, well, I need to ask a question about this because I don't know, this aspect. And you see all the other agencies have done, in theory, the same work that you're doing as well, and says, hey, I'm confident because I have WLA countries or level of maturity 4 countries already approving this, and I know the regulatory system is very mature. I will dedicate my resources somewhere else where it matters most, and I will, in this case, approve these changes without any questions because I trust the regulatory system of my peers, and I don't need to add them an extra level of review, and I'm going to use my staff to other areas as everybody's challenged with resources, and also the increased complexity of some of the drugs we're having, right? It's difficult, if you have cell therapies or gene therapies, to have expertise everywhere. So in this case, work sharing becomes very important, and you trust an expert that may be part of another country because you may not have the expertise locally, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe just for our listeners, I mean, you and I have been around the block a long time. Maybe I've had a few more laps than you, Dom, but we won't get into that. But think about when the ECTD came out and, from an organizational construct that really kind of fueled the regional hubs. You have a regional hub in Japan, maybe a couple in Europe, here in North America. But anytime there's standards, just like in clinical with CDISC, only good things come out of it. But the terminology was simultaneous submissions. And it's like, wow, we submitted to 20 countries this week, and look us go, but that's still the one-to-one relationship versus one-to-many that you guys have started. And who knows, in 2 or 3 years, hopefully it'll be one-to-most type of thing, because it's kind of a whole new, this is just not an incremental, innovation. It's just a complete rethink, because a lot of times, like with process, the word optimization, but you're not rethinking the whole frame of the process, which you guys did. So hands off to that. So I thought with our listeners, this train, it's a bullet train, right? It's not a slow steam engine. It's a bullet train that you're on. So what are you most excited about, in the next year or maybe 2 or 3 years out, where Accumulus is going with the health authorities and sponsors? I mean, what does your crystal ball tell us?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, when I'm, we're on the tail end of 2025. So, in 2026, what I'm looking for really is we have actually quite a large numbers of new companies joining Accumulus at the moment. And it's very exciting because they're also very happy to see they're all in different shape and size. Some are more regionally based, some are, small biotech companies, some are, rare disease and etc. So we're seeing, big pharma, little biotechs, and actually very, very small ones. We have one company is doing a pilot currently in Africa that is probably a virtual company with 10 people. So this level of adoption is very interesting because you see different companies who see different value depending on what they are within their level of maturities. Some of them are very interested, for example, to take their product already approved in, let's take examples, maybe Europe, and push it to the rest of the world, and want to see can I push the same dossier to other agencies? Well, yes, you can. So we're seeing this coming up more and more about companies thinking out of the box. We now passed most of the company first, quote unquote, first pilot. It's a normal processes. You do your first pilot project, again, production, and then you'll be able to define your return on investment, your benefits along the way. And now we're seeing companies accelerate it. I think last week we had 3 projects starting in 1 week. So we're having more and more projects starting in parallel, different agencies, some agencies covered. And we continue to push that forward with some very exciting new projects starting next year. As you mentioned, something in Africa that I think is going to help shape the future of clinical trials on the African continent. But also understanding that we want to connect to the source of the information. So we announced recently a partnership with Viva for us to build really an end-to-end. The information is stored by most companies, Viva or the document management system. And we want to ensure that there is a frictionless connectivity between the system that you can interact directly with agencies on the Accumulus platform, and then the system of references that this company are using to manage their information along the way. So the notion of what we call one-click submission, I think, is one of the most eager to see, in 2026. That's kind of my little dream as a reg ops person. Is I plan my submissions, in this case in Viva. I select my countries and then go with one click and I push my full dossier, my information, the Accumulus platform, where I can invite 20, 30, 40, 50 countries to review the same dossiers. So that will become a reality in 2026, which is very exciting. And we're going to continue to build with the support of our ecosystems. Again, we're getting requirements and feedback from agencies around things they would like to see in the platform to enhance productivity, to enhance, their work and access to the information, as well as the industry. And then we continue our journey to build and enhance features and listening to the ecosystems and our customers, provide, again, more efficient processes, higher value, and then continue to build other capabilities that would expand the type of project that people will be able to run within the platform. So that's for 2026. Again, very busy schedule in there, a lot of excitement.
Indeed.
In fast forward, a few years, I think it's difficult to tell what a few years is going to be down the road, to be honest. I mean, we've seen the pace of AI and what it took off for the last, year or less than a year. I would be heed advised to tell you, well, I have my crystal ball and I can tell you in 5 years where we're going to be. What I hope for, again, is that we're going to be more connected. Stronger collaborations. I love the concept of, one health, one world, one health, one dossier, right? I love these to evolve and having more work sharing and collaborations, having, of course, this done directly to initial applications. I think it's I would say, generational opportunity and potentially, I think, an obligation for us to work differently. We, as you know, we had, ECTD took, 15 years to go from initial specs to be used widely. It's not fully used widely today, to be honest.
Yep.
I don't have the time in front of me or potentially the patience to wait another 20, 30 years for the next revolutions. So I love that we can play a role in accelerating the pace of the change within the ecosystem, partnering with trade associations, with, industry, with regulators, NGOs, and explore the art of the possible. So that's really what I'm looking for, is continue to push this vision of one global dossier in the cloud, which I think everybody can agree upon at general terms. The how, that's the difficult part. And I don't think technology is the issue. The how would be, how do we harmonize requirements? How do we solve for cross-border data information? All these things that currently are impediment to greater use of collaborations. I have hope that technology can help support what we're doing, that AI will help support faster review processes, signal detections faster in clinical trials. I think there's a lot of things that AI can help with. But again, I think the core of it is the willingness to people to come together and make a difference. And I think we're getting there, and I'm very optimistic about the future.
Yeah, and it seems like you've gotten a lot of success. So actually a few comments and then one last question for you. As you were talking about some of the newer companies, the smaller biotech. So where my mind wandered is it's very, very different. Larger companies, they want to reduce complexity, first and foremost. But on those smaller companies, especially coming out of the clinical stage, is how do I scale, most appropriately? I'm conserving cash. We're investing to the growth curve. And like, how do I get from one or two initial markets to, the fifth market, the 10th, the 20th market, and actually expanding that out is very timely and very costly in the historic construct. But kind of imagining instead of wave 1, 2, or 3, you think about cohorts with markets, like different arrangements, irregardless of size or geographic location, or maturity of the health authority, that you could have different, kind of cohorts. And maybe from a regulatory perspective, that scaling just became simpler and not as kind of costly, with better predictability and confidence. And like, who wouldn't want that, right? So that was kind of my impression with the small kind of story. And who knows, in your crystal ball, I would love, because again, I just came fresh from the MedTech forum that I participated in, did a little presentation. And, we call what you do cloud-based regulatory spaces, right? So the CBRSs. But Accumulus did come up, and although there isn't that strict ECTD standard on the MedTech, they're trying to modernize, and, why not take a big leap as opposed to kind of like the small steps here on the medicinal side that we've taken over the last, 20 years. Why couldn't they fast forward and, instead of 20 years, it's 5 to 7 years, to really, get that breadth, because we see it in our survey from our first survey in 2007 to the one we have open right now, the percentage of companies that have combinational products, both the medtech and the biopharmaceutical side, that's increasing substantially. So just a couple of comments there, Dom. One last question, and I think it's well known with the announcement this summer with Viva, but you do work with other software providers on some of these projects, like I think Lorenz and others. Certainly the software provider space in the medtech is different, some different players. But maybe for our listeners, could you speak to, besides the partnership with Viva, are there other partnerships, or it's really kind of independent? You can, really work with a variety of different software providers.
No, it is a great question. Yes, and again, we went, with an announcement with Viva this summer. But the way we're anchoring and building the platform is that we have open APIs for people working more in technology side. Sorry. And therefore, we can connect pretty much with any system of references. And I think, we're going to see the evolutions. You have multiple system of references, even though Viva is predominant now, you have other RIM system, obviously, publishing system like Lorenz, as you mentioned, but also you have data sources. All this information is available. And I think for us, having built a very modern platform, again, it was built recently, so we have the latest technology, architecture and build inside the platforms, we're able to connect pretty easily with any system of references. For us, again, an opportunity to be frictionless from the source of this information. Ideally, we may even think in the future, not even to move informations, presenting to an agency without moving it. Because sometimes, does it make sense to move, 50 gigabytes of information to one place to another? Maybe not.
Yep.
All this is top of mind for us, how we architecture the platforms. And then again, our first engagement is with Viva for obvious reasons that as well.
Makes sense.
But we're very happy to engage with other technology vendors today to build a connector and share, our open APIs with them and ensure that, again, you have the system, an end-to-end process. Continuity of the information, the traceability, that integrity is top of mind. And therefore, again, very happy to work with the whole ecosystem to move things, to the next phase, next generation.
So thanks, Dom. Very interesting discussion, and I'm sure we just are hitting the tip of the iceberg. A lot of learning, a lot of innovation, a lot of possibility. So for our listeners, many of them know you, but those that don't, and especially with a lot of the smaller companies coming on board, how can they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
So thank you very much, Steve. And I think, we want to engage with the greater ecosystem, want to listen to what companies have in mind. And as I mentioned before, agencies are waiting. So, and happy to help facilitate those conversations. So the best way to reach out to me, directly to me, you can go to my email address, which is dominique.lagrave@accumulustech.com. But also have inquiry forms directly available on our website, accumulustech.com. Feel free to reach out to us. We're a wonderful team that will be eager to discuss with you on your need, your potential project. And I think I will reiterate, every pilot counts. And because it helps move the discussions one step further. And there's no, you don't have to do a 50 country pilot. 3, 4 countries, 5 countries helps. Everything helps to move the discussions further. And again, I want to encourage companies to reach out to us. Happy to work with you around what fits best your needs, and eager to engage and make a difference.
All right. Well, thanks, Tom. And for our listeners, you know how to get a hold of us in case you have any questions. Just go to our website, gensonassociates.com. There's the contact page, or I'm very active on LinkedIn, as everybody knows. Just reach out on LinkedIn. Tom, thanks again. Always a great discussion when we connect. And I think you have a lot going on in 2026. So maybe next fall, we can see where you're at, what was achieved. And the fascinating thing with this discussion, it's just all these, since it's the early days of innovation in this, there's a lot of offshoots, a lot of learning offshoots, both on the sponsor side and also on the health authority side. So it'll be good maybe have you back in a year and keep the learning going on this, because it's definitely a brave new world. Probably long overdue, but in our industry, we tend to move pretty slow, but this is certainly an initiative that's really picking up the pace. So thanks again so much, Tom.
Thank you for having Steve, and it will be a pleasure to reconnect, next year and share, what 2026 brought to us. But thank you again.
Fantastic. Thanks.